And I think there's a lot of evidence right now that we're at the end game, that all-at-once moment where the U.S. government pulls the plug on this game. And we return to a gold, silver standard, probably cryptos within there as well. Anything you want, really. The money gets returned to the people. Once I understood that, really, probably a couple of years ago, I was able to kick back, watch the silver and gold markets do what they do with the computer rigging, and just say, hey, I know I'm in the right. I'm going to hang on to my physical silver because I think that would be the best investment out of all of them in your own possession. And we're going to watch this thing play out, and it is playing out.
This is Little by Little with Andy Schectman.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to my second live interview with someone that's meant an awful lot to me for a very long time, my brother Bix Weir, and his theory and website of roota.com. There's no one that I would rather have on this show than you, Bix, and thank you for coming on, brother. It's an honor, and how you doing, my man?
I'm great. I keep seeing, because you're calling the show Little by Little.
Yeah.
And I think you might have to change that title very soon to All at Once.
Yeah, right.
Close to that All at Once.
Well, you know, I'm the little boy who cried wolf, and maybe you are too. The both of us are sitting on the front cover waving in the new abridged version. But you turn to the last page and the wolf cometh. And, God bless you for sounding the alarm. I've met you or heard of you or found you many, many years ago. I looked back and I saw the first email I had to you was 2011, way back then, and originally saw you on GATA. And I think for all of us gold and silver people, we all owe a debt of gratitude and respect to Bill Murphy and Chris Powell. That's where I first met you. La Metropole Cafe, GATA, they've done such an amazing job of waking up, at least people like you and I. We're still a minority, but like you said, the all at once is coming, and I think there will be a mass awakening. No question about it. But people will look back and thank guys like you for having the stick-to-itiveness. My sixth grade teacher always said, you need to have stick-to-itiveness. And it's been tough. It's been tough for us to stick to it, to stick to a theory, a belief, even when the world thinks we're crazy, and yet here we are. I remember driving with you and your wife from Texas to Oklahoma, and you blew my mind on so many things. There's so many things people need to understand about the way you look at the world. And before the internet, I used to see everyone would read newsletters, and I would always say, look, you read a half a dozen or a dozen newsletters, you formulate your opinion with all of this information and take it, whichever direction you think is important. One of the things that I've always appreciated about you is that you look at the world in a different way than most of the people that are on the internet. And so many of the things that you have said resonate with me in such a deep way. I'm going to try and talk about a few of those things here, but I think people need to know this. People who aren't as familiar with you need to go sign up for your website, sign up to Road to Roota, get your updates, become a member, because the information is stuff you're not finding anywhere else. And you've been right and ahead of the curve for a very long time. So with that said, my man, for those unfamiliar with your work, can you briefly explain the Road to Roota theory? And I hate to do that to you, but it's important because not everyone knows who you are, and I do, and I love you, but would you explain that for us?
Sure. And it used to be very difficult to explain back when I invented this theory in 2007, really, is when I was always a gold and silver bug back into the 1990s. But the Road to Roota theory came from a comic book that was released by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. And for whatever reason, you call it spiritual, I was on the site, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston website, on that specific education page that they have on that website the very day that this comic book was released. And it's all about going back to a gold standard. And it's a very bizarre comic. And then it had a teacher's guide with it called The Road to Roota, a teacher's guide. So that's where the original name Road to Roota came from. But I was very much in the camp of, it's the criminal banksters rigging the markets, gold and silver markets with GATA. I was lockstep with GATA for 7 straight years, doing everything I could to really research behind the scenes. Found this Road to Roota comic book, thought, oh, holy crap, you know what this is saying? It took a while. It took 6 months to a year to really analyze it. It's saying that there are people behind the scenes within the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government working to take out the banks, take out the cabal, take out the bad guys, and return us to sound money and sound governance. And at the time, it was, I was ostracized from GATA. That's the only way I can say it. These were all my close friends. They're like, holy crap, Dick, how can you say the Federal Reserve is on the side of the people and all that? This was long before Q and anybody was ever thinking about good guys, any kind of counter plan to the bad guys plan. And the way I came to this is this was not a one-off comic book that they placed out there. The Fed has a lot of comic books, but the Fed Boston only has one, and the original comic book came out in 1981 when we're thinking about going back onto the gold standard. When interest rates were going through the roof, the Gold Commission was created by Reagan. So I really dug into this and figured out kind of what was going on. And I found out one of the most important things is that we have a lot of gold. The United States of America has, and all around the world, there's a lot more gold than what guys like Jeff Christian will tell you. It's not 200,000 tons. My take, it's more like 2 million tons. But nobody really knows. And, you have your, quote, experts out there in gold and silver analysis who claim to be the experts. I don't think they're experts at all. I think they help run cover for the banking cabal, the control factor. So anyway, I found this, I discovered this theory that there are people behind the scenes looking to take out the bad guys. And I've run with it ever since. And every time I think, well, is it true? Was I correct? This is going back 17 years. Was I correct? Every time it comes back, yes, I was correct. And here's more evidence and more evidence and more evidence. And I think there's a lot of evidence right now that we're at the end game, that all at once moment where the U.S. government pulls the plug on this game. And we return to a gold silver standard, probably cryptos within there as well. Anything you want, really. The money gets returned to the people. So that's kind of how it started, and then it's branched off in many different ways. And I just have loved this adventure. And somebody told me long ago, it's not the destination that's going to be the most important thing in your life. It's that path you took to get there. It's the windy roads and the times you struggled and your victories and your defeats. That's what it's really all about. It's not about the destination. So once I understood that, really, probably a couple of years ago, I was able to kick back, watch the silver and gold markets do what they do with the computer rigging, and just say, hey, I know I'm in the right. I'm going to hang on to my physical silver because I think that would be the best investment out of all of them in your own possession. And we're going to watch this thing play out, and it is playing out. So I think we're at the end game, and that's kind of my life in a nutshell.
Yeah, my 6th grade teacher called it stick-to-itiveness, and you certainly have exhibited stick-to-itiveness, and so have I. We're two of the old-timers in this game. People can go to your website and read more about the Road to Roota theory. And do you actually have a link to the comic book on your website, the original one?
Yeah, in the resources tab at the top, you can find links to all the things I talk about, pretty much the original Road to Roota comic books, the redo of the Road to Roota comic books in 2007, the New York Times article from 1909 saying there's billions of ounces of gold in the Grand Canyon, all that stuff you can find in the resources tab at roadtoroota.com.
Yeah, that the reading on the Grand Canyon is very interesting, and how they've closed it off and you can't get down there. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I agree. I've checked that out. Well, I know that if I'm not mistaken, before you went down the rabbit hole, you were in banking. What allowed you, and I am very impressed by that, because, most people, there's a whole theory of investing, Elliott wave, Kondratiev wave, emotion-based investing. And most people have shunned precious metals and have looked at it as something that was archaic. And something that really is a has-been. Of course, the Elliott wave theory and the Kondratiev wave, the emotions will certainly wake people up at some point, and they'll realize that they've been mistaken by that. There are a lot of very well-read people who just read the wrong stuff. But how did you transition way back when from a guy, a normie, in banking into someone who began to look at precious metals at a period of time when it was mired in the midst of a decade-plus long bear market? What opened your eyes to gold and silver?
Truthfully, it was actually banking that got me into it. My job, I was working for GE Capital, computer leasing at the time, which gave me a background in computers a little bit. Left there and went to a company that does leases for large ticket items like huge mine haulers and drag lines and things like that. But I was put in charge of the backside derivative portion, not derivative, the backside residual portion of assets on a lease. So, like you lease a car, 5-year lease, you got to give it back. I'm the guy who went and took back the excavator at some mine. So I had to know everything about not only the equipment, but the industry, how the used market works in that type of industry, which made me naturally, we were doing some, I think it was steel or taconite and copper mines at the time. And the guy I was working for was just a brilliant guy, Wharton School of Economics. He said, you're going to have to understand the gold and silver market. It's a completely different market than any other market. And so I said, okay, started digging in the late 90s, instantly found GATA, and I'm like, holy crap, GATA's right. It didn't take long for me to see that GATA was right, that the prices of gold and silver were 100% manipulated, up and down. And then with my background in computers, I figured out over time that it was a computer operation, a computer rigging job that really came to being in the 1970s, that's really when the latest form of the comics came around, along with the CFTC. They kind of were born at the same time. And because I had a background in computers, I knew a guy who was a computer trader back in like the late 80s and was making millions of dollars. He was a famous guy. He sold his company for like $400 million to Goldman Sachs, back when $400 million was a lot of money. And he was basically using computers to understand the markets, not even understand the markets, to flash trade, to make money, the little bits of money off the quick movements. And I'm like, isn't that illegal? He's like, no, it actually is not illegal. And all the big guys are doing it now. And I started learning about high frequency trading and went down that rabbit hole, found out, who was kind of in charge of that for the banks and the government, a guy named Vincent Viola, very famous guy on Wall Street, runs a company, used to be called It used to be called EWT LLC, which is Elliott wave theory, because they play off the Elliott wave theory. And then they changed their name to Virtu Financial. So I was like, okay. So and he was a counterparty to Bernie Madoff. So Bernie Madoff ran the NASDAQ, Vinny Viola ran the NYMEX, and they split off and started their own companies. If you didn't know, the Bernie Madoff thing, huge computer rigging on the second floor of Bernie Madoff that they don't like to tell you about. But Vinny Viola is still going strong, and they're still the number one market maker on the COMEX, on all exchanges in the Forex market. Virtu Financial is the number one company for high frequency trading, aka also known as market rigging, and they collude with the big banks to basically control these markets, and that's what it's about. It became obvious after a while, and as a matter of fact, Root A is actually a programming term in Fortran. For those of you old school people who remember Fortran, Alan Greenspan was an expert in Fortran in the 1960s. He went and took his computer models first to the Council of Economic Advisors under Ford, and was helping rig the markets to control. When we went up the gold standard, you had to control the price of gold and silver. So they did control it. He brought it up to $800 in 1980, and then he brought it down. And if you look back at every market crash we've had since, They've all been triggered by computer programs. And that's why I like to say, hey, at the end of the day, the United States, with how much we have, 70 trillion in debt, not counting a lot of stuff right now, largest debtor nation in the world by far. We can end this game with a click of a mouse. I've been saying that for a very long time. And I think ultimately that will be it. The click of a mouse that destroys the derivative bubble, which is $2 to $3 quadrillion, where the derivatives gone bad. And then, I mean, literally, Warren Buffett was absolutely correct when he said it's a weapon of mass financial destruction. Nothing will remain standing that's not in your own possession. So I think we are coming to that point. It's been a long time coming. But everything I look at over these, 25 years of working on this, is saying now is the time.
I hope people understand just by listening to you for 10 minutes what a wealth of information you are, and deep, and have done your homework and have done your research. And as my sixth grade teacher says, you have definitely exhibited stick-to-itiveness. So, I agree with everything you say. Just about everything you say explicitly resonates with me. And I think that you can only manipulate a market for an extended period of time. It's been a good run for Vinny by pushing it in the direction that it is going. So with that in mind, what do you see as the future for fiat currencies, in particular the U.S. dollar, in the next decade, with all of this in mind?
Well, that word unsustainable. People love throwing out that word unsustainable and too big to fail. That's one of my favorites. I think we're going to hit that very soon. We got a 3-day weekend coming up in 2 weeks. The timing couldn't be better for if you're going to take down a monetary system before the election. If you're scared about the election, ultimately the fiat money system will go to zero. Its intrinsic value is zero. I'm not a big fan of the word intrinsic value because that's in the eyes of the beholder. Value is, if I was on a desert island and you offered me an ounce of gold or a ham sandwich, I'd take the ham sandwich all day long. It all depends on who you're talking to. But I do believe in if there's anything I disagree with you lately about is that the BRICS and all that stuff about them potentially starting a new currency, gold-backed, gold semi-backed. I don't think that could ever happen because I believe we're in the middle of the last fiat currency. It's the first time ever there's been a global unbacked fiat currency. It's never been like this before. And the amount of anger, the amount of dismay, the amount of people who will lose everything they literally worked their whole lives for in a blink of an eye, we won't have the same people deciding what the future of money is.
But isn't that the whole theory of the BRICS and the gold-backed settlement currency? It's not a common settlement currency, as we've been told. Well, settlement currency.
But true, but there won't be any other currencies. It's kind of like, from what I heard, it's like, 40% gold and whatever it is. The whatever it is part will be gone. So it will be gold, and no one will trust any other country holding it. Like, who would hold the gold?
Well, it's interesting you say that, and I'm glad you bring that up. This wasn't on my list of questions to ask you, but since you bring it up, Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil, is the head of the BRICS New Development Bank, and in the meeting in Novigrad a few weeks ago, she said, we've agreed in principle to a settlement currency called the unit. She had a meeting with Sergei Glaziev, who was the architect of it, traded over Project Mbridge, first and foremost. And Project Mbridge is a cross-border payment system for central bank digital currencies. It won't be the currencies as they exist now. And if you look at the global GDP and all of the countries that comprise it, 99% of those countries have a CBDC in development or operation. So to your point, I agree, it would be a new system, a new currency. She said that the unit token would be traded over Mbridge. And let's just for a moment, Mbridge is developed by China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates. And the fifth country that has signed on as a full participant is Saudi Arabia. There's about 30 observational participants. But in reading the white paper on the unit is very interesting. And if you look at all the countries, almost 40 of them that have repatriated their gold recently from the Bank of England and the New York Fed, the conventional wisdom is, well, they don't trust the West anymore, and that's rightfully so. We've sanctioned and stole Russian assets, and they view us as hypocritical and no better than anyone. So if you read the white paper, it says something very interesting, and to me, this is why they're all repatriating their gold. It says that the gold and the 60% currency, not more than 30% of any one currency comprising that 60% basket, will be put into escrow accounts and audited continuously within the borders of the countries that possess it. In other words, it will not need to be sent to Beijing, to Moscow, or to Dubai. Each country has it in an escrow account, independently audited continuously within their own borders. So it's an interesting thought experiment. In other words, they all trade with their CBDCs with one another over Enbridge, but if they want to settle in something, it's the unit token with the metal and the currency baskets in escrow in their own country. So I don't know if that changes your thinking on it or not, but it's a valid look. It's better than the current system, that's for sure. And I'm not even sure that they're going to roll it out, but it's intriguing no matter what.
Well, yeah, it would be a derivative of a gold standard. We tried that before; it failed. It would be, I mean, it kind of what you just described kind of reminds me of the IMF. We're supposed to hold all this gold, but they've never said where the gold is held. Who's the auditor type of thing.
Right.
And it's like, when trust ends and all those fiat systems fly away, no one's going to trust anybody with their gold or nobody's going to trust anybody at all. So I mean, what it says in the Roota to Roota documents is basically countries stop trading with each other for quite a while. And you basically put your arms around your country. You take care of yourself. The United States has what's left of a constitution and a history of using gold and silver as money. We have a lot of gold. Not sure we have a lot of silver anymore. I do believe there's a lot of really good silver mines in the United States that they've just shuttered and won't let open up. But definitely we have a ton of gold. Not a ton, like 1 million tons of gold. Something so astronomical. And I got to that point not just by guessing. I really did a lot of research into that article I found, the gold in the Grand Canyon. It's all in placer gold. At the time, they set the price of gold to $20. Well, the problem was it was costing them, after the Fed started inflating just a little bit, it was costing them $25 to pull it out of the sand. So they just stopped. And then Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act, locked up the Grand Canyon, said no more mining near the Grand Canyon. And they basically locked up all the Colorado River in that area because they know there's so much gold within the Grand Canyon, the Banks Colorado River, all the way up. And then, I mean, I was really into understanding, not just saying I believe it, but understanding Sterling and Peggy Seagrave's book, Gold Warriors, which talks about Yamashita's gold. I remember my Gada friends were saying, this is ridiculous, dumbest thing ever. There's not 300,000 tons of gold even in the world. How could they say this, blah, blah, blah. I go, well, you guys, did you really read the book? Did you look at the evidence? And they didn't. None of them did. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're doing the same thing that guys like Jeffrey Christian do to you. You're a tinfoil hat guy without doing the research. And it was part of the reason I left Gada back in the day. It wasn't like they didn't have a membership, but they had people who were contributing. And I stopped agreeing because they stopped their research at some point. They heard there might be 300,000 tons of gold, and they said, that's not true. We've only mined 200,000. But you look at the research, the Supreme Court cases, all the documentation. I got 3 CD-ROMs of documentation. It's all true. And the amazing thing is it has been used as, they call it black gold, running the secret operations of the United States of America for a very long time. Great article on the resources section of the Road to Root about 9/11 and how that gold plays into what happened on 9/11. But the reality of whether or not we can trust anybody when the monetary system falls apart. Remember, anybody with U.S. dollar debt, it'll be worth 0, but their currencies are going to be worth 0 too. And there's no way the United States would willingly let anybody take over control of all this unbacked fiat money stuff. And knowing that they have a computer that they can click a mouse and destroy the entire monetary system, literally. It is a mouse click away, destroying everything. We almost saw it in 2008. And if you do any research into what happened in 2008, it was a computer system click of a mouse, and all of a sudden everybody and their mother was told, get all your money out of the stock market. And all the, it broke the buck as far as the money market accounts and all that. That was a computer click. Greenspan did the first one in 1987. Right after he got to be the head of the Fed, he clicked that mouse and almost destroyed everything. Everything is controlled by these computers that can literally destroy anything with a blink of an eye. You can take down the entire global monetary system. So I don't think there'll be, it's good try is what I'd say to like stuff like China and Russia trying to, skirt around the SWIFT system and all that. And, all the guys over at, what's that crypto they say is going to be the new SWIFT system.
XRP.
XRP. Hey, good luck, guys. I mean, look who you're dealing with. You got a couple bankers from, I think it was Morgan Stanley who invented it. And they've already sold $35 billion worth of XRP and got cash for it. You think guys like Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen or Greenspan or any of these guys couldn't end them in a second? They could. They don't see it as a threat at all because it's not. No one would give the XRP holders all that power. No government would. And if no government's the government's gonna throw up blocks against that. So, all this stuff that people are said, hey, it's going to go this way, it's going to go that way. Long time ago, I used to believe that too. There was all these funds, the secret funds, the XYZ funds, and all that. None of them ever panned out. The dinar never panned out. All this stuff never panned out. And the reason is there can't be any deciders. Once there's deciders, it takes trust, it takes faith, and all that will be destroyed when they click that mouse. There will be no trust left in the United States of America. There'll be no trust left between China and India or China and Russia. There's barely trust there historically. But the ramifications of ending an unbacked global fiat monetary system cannot be, you can't underestimate how big this is. It's the biggest thing that could ever happen in human history because we've been sucked into this fairy tale world since 1913. And I think the reason we got sucked in the beginning is they found all that gold in the Grand Canyon right before. And I saw you had G. Edward Griffith on. I love that guy. I read his book 3 times and I listened to it on tape 10 times. He gets everything right except one thing, the motivation. No, he doesn't really talk about the motivation of why these bankers were in such a hurry back when they had that meeting on Jekyll Island. I think
what is the motivation?
I think it's because they found billions of ounces of gold in the Grand Canyon. In the early 1900s, there was only 100 million ounces of gold in the United States and about 300 million in the world of ounces. So there wasn't that much gold. And all of a sudden, page 3 of the New York Times, they're announcing billions and billions and billions of ounces in the banks of the Colorado River. There was a mini gold rush right after that. Everybody was running into the Grand Canyon to try to mine gold. It was extremely difficult to do. You had congressmen jumping up and down saying, we can't set the price of gold at $20 because everything else is inflating. So you had all the gold miners were going bankrupt until FDR changed it from $20 to $35 and then it got profitable again. But this is all going back so far in whatever you're hearing in the news. And we're going to look back at this time and say the same thing. It's all lies. It's all lies to kick the can a little farther, a little farther, a little farther. And I think we are at that point in time when we're going to stop kicking the can. Will it happen before the election? Will it happen after? I really think it might happen before, which is a lot better than World War III. Well, maybe. Who knows? If you in the monetary system, all of a sudden, not a single person on the planet could go to their ATM and get any money out, all their life savings is gone, what would that do to those people, those deciders who are trying to make this new system, whichever one you pick? They're going to get thrown out the window right away. You're going to have to go back to what's already on the books for the United States. It's going to be gold and silver. And then Trump wants to bring in cryptos. I think it's a great idea. but give the people their money back. And I think the United States has a lot of gold that nobody knows about. I think China has massive amounts of gold. I remember Jim Sinclair saying China was literally taking in physical gold, 2,000 tons a year for the past 30 years. And you do that math, it's like, holy crap, China's got a shitload.
Not to mention they produce between 300 and 500 metric tons per year. Yeah, their numbers were stuck at 1,200 forever. I agree with that. And to your point, I would love nothing more, actually, than for us to become more of a protectionist country, to protect our own, to close our borders, to close the military bases, bring everyone home, and start working on this country instead of everywhere else. I'm hopeful for that, actually. So in your opinion, I mean, obviously the metals markets are manipulated. We see the drawdown in silver. In the LBMA, we saw 8% of the float delivered in August. How much longer can this go on?
Well, again, until they click a mouse. I mean, you can have a price for silver on the COMEX and have no silver available on the planet. That's a possibility. It's ridiculous. What's happening right now should be ridiculous. They're trading 400 or 500 million ounces of silver per day in derivatives just on the COMEX, doing a little more over at the LBMA. That's what's setting the price. It's got very little to do with the physical market, although with the new rush towards the green energy, especially solar panels and electric cars, the Silver Institute has been lying through their teeth for years, but the lies are more egregious now. For example, the Silver Institute said last year the solar panel installs were up 76%. And I'm talking to the guy over at the Silver Institute. It's just two guys over there. One's the head of Hecla, then the other guy, Mike Dorinzo. And I'm like, how are you going to shape this? How are you going to tell the people that the amount of silver used from 2022 to 2023 has gone up 76%? Which is, at the time, it was like 100 million ounces or something, 100 and something million ounces. I'm like, you guys are stuck. You can't lie, can you? He goes, oh, no, we have our special sources. Well, they lied. They went back and they changed all the historical numbers, but they still only could get 36% gain. And I'm like, this is so obvious. Everybody, and they say it's thrifting. Thrifting is maybe 5-6% per year, which is, new technologies that take some of the silver needed out of the solar panels. And I was just, I was shocked. They got out of it by lying and changing historical numbers. And the same thing's happening this year. We're going to do 50%, about 50% more installs of solar panels around the world, which means it's even more silver now because of TOPCon technology uses a lot more silver, although it's getting better. They've got new ways, but all the old TOPCon is still using, 20, 25 grams per watt, but the Silver Institute and Metals Focus is measuring it at like 10 or 11 grams per watt. And I'm like, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. I mean, the best they can do now, the high end of and this is the guy who, the biggest company in the world making the silver paste for solar panels, says they can get about 14 to 15 grams per watt on the brand new technology, which is maybe 3 or 4% of what's being made right now. So they're so off the mark, and it's embarrassing. A lot of people have been giving the Silver Institute shit for years and years because of various reasons. They get a lot wrong, but this was glaringly obvious. And if you go to roadtoroota.com, I put the spreadsheet up there, and literally every red box is a historical number they changed, so it didn't look as bad as they actually made it.
Interesting, and I've talked a lot about it too in a different respect. I'd like your take on it. I don't know what you think about this. John Little of the Pickaxe does a heck of a lot of research. He's a smart guy. He shows congressional hearings in 1942 where we say we need 200 million ounces a year for military applications. And conspicuously, on the Silver Institute numbers, it doesn't show any military applications. And if you look at the short position on COMEX, there are 8 commercial banks, Western banks, that hold the largest concentrated short position in any commodity ever traded. It's in silver. Does the military-industrial complex, in your mind, have a role to play in why silver is being suppressed?
Well, yes. I mean, economics plays a huge role in the military. You can win wars just economically. It's all part of the same machine. Although I would like to point out that 200 million ounces a year needed in 1942, there was a specific purpose for that silver as opposed to all the years following, and that was the creation of the calutrons at the Manhattan Project. They needed, at first it was about 800 million ounces, and then they jumped it to 3 billion ounces when they made the B12 facility, the other facility. So you're trying to make enriched uranium. You need these silver magnets. And so in 1941, 1942, those numbers for silver will be skewed massively. And because ultimately, I think they put close to 3.2 billion ounces of silver into this production machinery, making calutrons to enrich the uranium. Having said that, yes, absolutely, they use a lot of silver in the military. I think it's a crossover between what's already counted in the industrial side because you have components that are used all over the place. I don't know. Probably the military doesn't even know how much silver they use now. But that was a time when the amount of silver needed in the military was skewed because of making that facility. And they closed down that facility in the 1990s when you see all these exports of silver out of the United States. They quadrupled for like 5 years in a row in the mid-90s. And everyone's like, what the hell's going on? But it was the teardown of the calutrons at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the basically bringing that silver back into the market. There was all these rumors of radioactive silver at the time and things like that, and whether or not it can be radioactive, I have no idea. But the reality was that was one of probably the biggest secret that I've ever uncovered in silver, and it was a monster one, and it wasn't really a secret either. They talked about it on these like a History Channel. The way I found it, the History Channel had a show about the secret cities of the world, and they were talking about Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the calutrons, and how they had to borrow all the silver. They said, because copper wasn't available was complete bullshit. And then they said, oh yeah, when the war was over, we replaced the silver with copper. They did not, and it was finally torn down in the 1990s. So yeah, but having said that, yes, you're right. And when you were talking about the Tomahawk missiles, I was like, looked into it. It's hard to find information on any of that, but I did calculate how many Tomahawk missiles had been made since day one, and it didn't come out to like a real significant number, even using the large amount of silver that we had, maybe 5 to 10 million ounces, because they haven't made that many Tomahawks. They're really expensive to make. But when we're talking about the big things, I mean, in silver, it would be the number one thing stopping price is the comics.
So let me ask it a different one. This is what I love.
Put down the comics.
I mean, there is no one who's done research the way you have, and you have my admiration, seriously. Well, let me ask it another way. Why are there 8 commercial banks holding the largest concentrated short position in a thinly traded market like silver? What is the motivation to hold down silver? Why?
I think there's several motivations. One, it's a monetary metal, so you got to control monetary metals so you can print as much money as you want and not, have the consequences. I think number 2 is just as important. Silver is the number one metal on the planet for the use by the people in the industrial world. Nobody wants the price of silver to go up. Nobody at all, except silver investors and maybe the mining companies. Yeah, because who wants to pay 3 times for their flat screen TV or their cell phone? And who wants to limit the amount of solar panels we can make? I mean, there's an actual reason to keep the price of silver so cheap that people barely notice it anywhere. For example, if silver was like $10,000 an ounce, you wouldn't have these real nice flat screen TVs. You still have electric cars because the overall value of the entire car would, say there's 2 to 3 ounces in a car. So your electric car would go from $50,000 to $70,000 to $80,000. You can do those. Solar panels, they just have to stop making them the way they are. And there are other ways to make solar panels, but the efficiency isn't the same. So yeah, there's plenty of reasons to hold the price of silver down. And then all of a sudden, the number one reason would be they're trapped. They're in a pickle. They got this short position they can't get rid of. They can't stop playing the game, because if they stop playing the game, silver goes to, whatever, $1,000-$2,000 an ounce. And all of a sudden you have two big banks failing every which way. So there's plenty of reasons to rig the price of silver.
Couple more questions, Bixie. I've kept you a while. I appreciate it, man. You're fascinating, and you always expand my thinking every time I talk with you. Let's just switch gears a little bit. You've talked a lot about cryptocurrencies, in particular Theta. And how do you see their role in the post-fiat system after some sort of a crash or a reset or whatever is coming? Where do cryptocurrencies fit into all of this?
I love cryptos. I didn't understand in the beginning. I said, don't buy that. That's not real stuff. So if I explained to me what digital scarcity was and how important it is to be able to understand, first of all, how much, nobody knows how much gold there is in the world. Everybody knows how much Bitcoin that can ever be mined. So I got that. And it's an asset you can hold in your own possession. It is no third-party risk if you hold it, which is an amazing thing. And that's why I got into gold and silver. If you want your individual freedom, you're going to have to get money in your own hands. Don't have government be in charge of your money. I think that's the amazing thing that crypto can bring, a decentralized way to get government out of our lives. On the monetary side, yeah, that's great. Bitcoin and Litecoin, they do that. There's some monetary cryptos. But the other stuff that it can do, for example, Theta just released their mobile edge node. So now everybody with an Android phone, not everybody, but certain configurations with an Android phone can run an edge node, help share broadband, expand broadband, which is massive. We need that now. Expand the hard drive capabilities of AI, the computing speeds of AI, because they're all linked together on mobile phones. And it's crazy. And it's not one mobile phone doing it. One mobile phone's doing a little bit, but you put them all together and it's bigger than anything anybody's ever seen. This is so revolutionary. The concept of sharing current capacity, especially in times right now. If China goes into Taiwan, instantly the chips will stop flowing to all the computers. How can AI ever expand? How can we expand broadband? Through Theta, through a software download onto your device that shares all this excess capacity. When you think about it, your hard drive right now on the computer you're talking to me in has excess hard drive capacity. It has excess computational power. It has excess broadband that can be used. And I do think the ultimate for Theta and Theta Fuel especially will be a disruption in the computer manufacturing sector through war with Taiwan, through the floods. There's some special quartz to make silicon, and they have, I think this is why they steered that hurricane right there. That area is now shut down, and it's the most important area on the planet for making silicon chips. Is you need this highly refined quartz that is in the Appalachian Mountains, and all of a sudden nobody can get it. So what's going to happen to computer manufacturing after the current inventory of silicon chips dries up? And I think there's a huge conspiracy for anybody wanting to track that one down of why it's kind of like Hawaii, on Maui when they shut down Lahaina, and nobody can go in to get their, rebuild their house or anything. Not letting anybody in. It's been, how long has it been since the Hawaii fires? The same thing is going on in Appalachia. They're not letting helicopters in. I saw an interview the other day. The guy said, I had a buddy, I had a helicopter. We saw so many people, we can pick them up. Where's the government? We should have hundreds of helicopters picking people up. They're dying right now in the Appalachian Mountains because everything got flooded out. They have no food. They have nothing.
No running water. I saw that.
No. And the government's not doing anything.
Why, Bixie? Why?
Well, it gets me so angry that because we're fighting an evil part of the government, the good guys and bad guys, I call them. The bad guys, why did they take out Lahaina? Lahaina was like the historical capital of Hawaii, going way back in the Hawaiian tradition. It was Lahaina on Maui, beautiful town. I used to go there all the time. I'd hang out with Dick Allgaier right in that area. Great fun. But there's various reasons. I think it was a spiritual reason. I heard it's got to do with trafficking and all that as well. Who knows what motivates these evil people to do their evil deeds? Like 9/11, for example. Everybody knows it wasn't, the 19 hijackers. So how do they get away with it? And everyone, once in a while I sit there and go, we have to stop this. As a matter of fact, something that in the Roota comic books, in the new one in 2007, Roota wrote into the sand 11 plus 9. I think it was a clear sign that we're trying to stop this criminal cabal that runs our lives, and 9/11 was the last straw. But also it could be 9/11 2008 was the day that the money market, there was a run on money market funds. So they could have told us a year and a half before. As a matter of fact, they did in that comic book, the Roota comic books, that something was going to happen on 9/11.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you, brother. You are just a wealth of information, and what I like about you is you're not just saying something without backing it up. I looked at a little about what you wrote about being, you call yourself a conspiratorial nut when it comes to looking at the $1 bill and trying to figure out the eye on top of the pyramid and all of this stuff. And I remember doing a conference with you 15 years ago or longer with our friends from Switzerland in San Francisco, I think. And I remember talking to the audience about your theory on the new $100 bill, which I at the time found completely fascinating. And I saw you just issue something recently on it. Could you just explain to my listeners your theory on the new $100 bill as briefly as you can?
Well, sure. I had long been, I had heard, some of my people that joined the Roota early said, hey, keep an eye on this $100 bill, the new one that was coming out. And this was 2009, I believe. It was before 2009. And I'm like, why haven't they, made a counterfeit proof $100 bill? They made the 20, they made the 5, they made the 10. They haven't done the 1. They did the 50 and all counterfeit. Wouldn't you start with the 100, the most valuable bill? And then I did some research into the $100 bill. It's known as a super note. It's the most counterfeited bill in the world. They have in Russia, in China, they have the plates to make as many as they want. Why would that be last? And then it came out, and it even looked like what I was saying. There's good guys and bad guys. Because if you look at the bill, it's got that blue stripe in the middle, which is you can look at my article. It talks about what the color of the stripes mean. But on the left side, it's all the fiat side. It says the Federal Reserve. It has, I think it was Steve Mnuchin at the time, signature and stuff, or Geithner. And the right side is all gold. And not only is it all gold, it says gold 100, gold fountain pen, gold inkwell, and it has that part of the Constitution that says you as an individual have the right to overthrow your government if they get out of hand. And that is written in gold right above the 100, right on the $100 bill. And I'm like, oh my God, if my theory that there's good guys and bad guys, this was long before Q, by the way, long before. I love that side of it too. But if there are good guys and bad guys, this is the perfect bill to put out. And, it came out and I'm like, holy mackerel. It looks like we are at some point going on to a gold standard. And then it was, over the years, I figured out we have a lot of gold. We can go back. The quantity of gold is not necessarily important. It is the quantity in relation to all the other things it's going to be buying and selling and things like that. But we're going to have to know the quantity, or at least close to, and I don't think we do. So Bitcoin, obviously, we know 21 million will ever be created. Most of them have already been created. Over 19 million have been created. And the last little Satoshi will be created, I think, in 2132 or something like that, projected. So there's a lot of things that it's not like we can say, okay, we're going back to gold and silver. There's a zillion things that they have been planning for, and that's the good thing. If I'm right, and there are good guys behind the scenes working on this, they've had over 100 years to work on it. And they better have some really good, smooth transition stuff. It won't be real smooth. But the reality is, I don't see anybody trusting anybody of our current government.
I agree with that, and I urge people to read your article on the $100 bill and take a look at it when you're just sitting in your car or something. Look at it, how that blue line delineates gold and all of the gold theory versus the fiat system, and that blue line, in my mind, is a very thin line between conspiracy and reality. And I applaud you for opening my eyes to that. Last question, brother, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. As I always say, I always get mushy with you, but you mean a lot to me, and you've done a lot for my company, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for you and your listeners. I mean that, and I thank you, seriously. The last question I have for you, because, again, and I can't hammer this home enough. What I've always admired about you is you look at the world through a different prism than other people, and you are not someone who just rehashes the same old rhetoric, and you open people's eyes into looking at the world differently. And I think that's really important. You're able to connect the dots, to see the crumbs, and maybe that is a crumb, that $100 bill. Maybe that is something that we're supposed to recognize, and maybe there is a fine line between that, and maybe that is reality. I'll leave that for others to decide. The last question I got for you, brother, is what is the one message that you want people to take away from your work and the Road to Roota theory? People who are listening to this and gotten this far, what's the one piece of info that you would like them to take away from that, and let them go and check it out themselves, do some reading and following you. And I hope everyone will. I do. I try not to miss anything that you put out. What's that one piece you want people to take away?
I would say there is hope. There is hope that we can get through this and end up in a better place than where we are today. And I truly believe that. And it's not just that. I love the term hopium, but it's hopium with research and facts to back up that there are good guys within the United States government and at the Fed, believe it or not, who are ready to make the transition not as dire as it could have been, but especially not to lose control to the bad guys when this crash happens. And I think that's the most important thing. Don't be caught up in the fear. That's the only thing we have to fear. We're spiritual beings living in physical life for a little bit of time. If you let the fear hold you back, you're not going to reach your full potential out there. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be volatile, but knowing that there are people, including me, including Andy, including you, who are working to make this place a better place for our kids, for their future. The can doesn't have to always be kicked down the road. So that would be my final message.
I'm going to send this video to Donald Trump and nominate you for head of the Federal Reserve. And Bix, I can't thank you enough, brother. I look forward to picking up with you where we left off, one way or the other. You're a great man. Bix Weir, Road to Roota. Everyone check them out. Do yourself a favor, expand your mind, and look at the world through all sorts of different angles. And Bix, you're one in a million, brother. My best to the family, and you stay well. I hope to talk with you soon, bro. And then look, as they say, Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. With the election 4.5, 5 weeks away, these are interesting times, man. And I'll be watching everything you put out, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
And I got my tagline, may the road you choose be the right road. I think that's
amen, brother.
Going to come down. We're looking for the right road right now.
Amen, my man. All the best to you, Bixie, and stay well. You look good. Hope to talk to you soon.
Take care.
See you, brother.
Little by Little with Andy Schectman.